Hey everybody, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of you for supporting the show by subscribing to it, by sharing it with your friends, your family, your teachers, your classmates, your crazy next door neighbors, and anyone else who is genuinely interested in discovering new ways to take learning through play to the next level. Shout out to Gaijin Goomba for plugging Engage on his fine program not too long ago. Folks, if you haven't seen Game Exchange, you don't know what you're missing. Game Exchange is a fine program on YouTube that digs deep into the cultural influences behind a lot of your favorite video games like none other. Now folks, it's been a long time since I've been able to wrap production on an episode of Engage, and today I wanted to tell you personally that I'm afraid you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but I promise you the wait will be worth it. Having to find new work again has been the main cause for this delay, but on the brighter side of things, my video editing skills have come a long way in catching up with my creativity and vision for the show. I'm really proud at how far Engage has come, and I'm so psyched to share with you the next episode on the Pericles Group, but I'm not going to even think about releasing it until it's ready. Last week I decided to bite the bullet and attend the Games+Learning Society conference out in Madison, Wisconsin, with the hopes of forging new connections with other people who are out there who are just as invested as I am in fostering the true potential of game-based learning. Not just in digital games either, I'm talking any kind of game. Long story short, the conference was amazing, especially the food. But I know this is a little stereotypical to say about Wisconsin, but I was really surprised at the lack of cheese at meals. I was expecting them to go all out in that department with every cheese-related food you could think of, like grilled cheese, quesadillas, mac and cheese, I don't know. But maybe they're bored of it or something. But it doesn't matter. The food was superb and the best I've had at any convention ever. But more importantly than the food, I met a ton of interesting people, both from the academic world and the game design world. But I was really surprised at how few people were there from the K-12 education world. The amazing Joel Levin of Minecraft EDU was one of them. The guys from EdGamer were, that's 2, 3. Granted, I didn't expect to see that many teachers at this conference or that many principals, but I expected more than a handful. So I asked around to everybody, where are all the teachers? Where are all the principals? Where are these people? And the most popular answer that I got was because GLS was scheduled right smack dab in the middle of June, that it was still during the school year. This is an unfortunate oversight that frankly I wouldn't even bother to bring up because maybe it was just a logistical issue and they just couldn't swing it this year. But I bring it up because out of most of the panels and the workshops that I attended, K-12 educators, that world right there, wasn't even factored or mentioned much in the conversation, and I was really surprised at that. Nearly everyone had something to say about standards and implementation and engagement and assessment and all those lovely same such topics that we all love to discuss when it comes to education. And yes, it's important to discuss those topics, but precious few of those people, if any of them, had any genuine experience to cite to back up anything that they were talking about, experience working with kids or teenagers or teachers or administrators or parents. Heck, hardly any of these panels, if any of them, specifically cited any sort of effort to collaborate with teachers in the field, let alone even bring up the idea as a concept. The moment that screamed this the most loudly and clearly to me was during Constance Steinkuller's keynote. Steinkuller wisely stressed the importance of developing these innovation ecosystems with clear methods of communication and collaboration between each other in order to take game-based learning to the next level. And amidst these 4 key groups that she brought up, I couldn't help but notice that the K-12 education world was not in that equation, or at least not explicitly. Not one of those ecosystems were specifically labeled K-12 education. If this community wants to get serious about taking game-based learning to the next level, then teachers like myself need to be part of the conversation. It's not only a matter of collaboration, it's a matter of respect. Teachers are the ones who work the most closely with kids and teens each and every day to meet their needs as much as humanly possible, and it's high time that they be sought out for the expertise and the insight that they possess. You want to know about how to juggle engagement and implementation and assessment with a little bit of humanity? Go ask a teacher! But input from teachers was not the only thing that I noticed missing from the equation at GLS. Input of substance from kids and teens was missing too. You want some real 21st century learning? Make it student-centered, not standard-centered. Talk to some kids out there. Find out what games they enjoy playing and why. Find out what they're actually interested in learning about. If you're designing a game, figure out how that can be facilitated. Work together with teachers in order to figure out how to make that happen. Learning is not solely about meeting standards and learning objectives. It's about sharpening strengths while improving upon areas of growth. It's about bringing people together to work as a team and learn from each other and help each other out. It's about meeting a challenge and figuring out strategies that will help you overcome that challenge. That's what learning is about, and that's what game-based learning should be about. That's your 21st century learning. And speaking of games, I heard a ton of people at GLS talk about how they'd love to bring more indie game devs in the house. And this is a fabulous idea to help bring games for learning and elevate it up to the level of popular commercial game titles out there. One suggestion though, if you're serious about bringing more indie game devs onto our team, then don't schedule your conference during E3. All of what I'm talking to you about right now has already been said many times. This unfortunately is not new news. Eric Zimmerman and Nick Fortugno wrote all about this issue for Gamasutra back in 2005. That was almost 10 years ago already. 10 years, people! This needs to change already. We all need to start act like we're playing on the same team and get out of our comfort zones and reach out to one another. If professors and grad students continue to operate in their silo over here and the game design world is in their bubble over here and nobody decides to invite teachers or students or anybody who just loves playing games to the party, then all we're going to do is just keep churning out chocolate-covered broccoli crap over and over and over again. That's all we're going to do. And this needs to stop. This needs to stop now. Now, I'm not the kind of person who critiques without offering a solution. I don't know exactly how to go about solving this issue, and it's definitely a more complicated issue. It's not just going to be a one-stop shop solution. But I'm pledged to you right now, dear viewers, that I am going to do something about it. If you have any suggestions for me on what steps to take, by all means, fire away in the comments below. Ideally, I personally would really love to continue working with young people while working closely with game designers and members of the academic world, but that almost sounds like trying to be in two places at once, and unfortunately I'm sure that they haven't developed the technology yet. We're still waiting for the flying car. What's taking them so long? Come on, the flying car, it's 2013. I was lucky enough to be sitting in the front row during the closing fireside chat of GLS with the one and only James Paul G, and I took out my phone and recorded it as soon as I realized looking around the room that it didn't seem like anyone was recording this really important talk on video. Since I wasn't using a quality microphone, I've done my best within my skill set to clean up and amplify the audio so that all of you could hear it, and I've gone through and transcribed as much as the conversation that I could make out. If you don't know who James Paul G is, I recommend that you check out this video first before you go any further. Thanks for watching, thanks so much for supporting the show and subscribing to the show, and I can't wait to blow all of your minds with episode 3 on the Pericles Group by the end of this month. Thank you.
So there was a day in, I don't know, some of us were younger, where science was truth. It was taught as truth. It was synonymous with fact. And then these damn lefties came in, and they decided to transform truth into discourse.
That's what our problems in education and in society are not due just to conservatives. Liberals have played every bit of role to help this problem. You're giving one good example where they said, it's not about truth, it's about discourse, it's about power, and then they got the ultimate postmodern president, George Bush. They got what they wanted. The same thing in education. The liberals say, just put kids in a rich environment, let them muck around, they're so creative. Well, all the literature says the poor will get poorer and the rich will get richer that way, and in fact, kids do need instruction, problems have to be seen, and they need tools. Right? So, no, stupidity is not the preserve of just conservatives. Well, I'm not advocating science as mastery or truth with a capital T. I'm saying a simple thing is that if you don't pay attention to what a game does after you lose the game, if you don't pay attention to the Earth's response when you do something like put your hand on fire, do it again, you will burn your hand off. Right? This is really not master narrative. This is what people used to call survival.
So if you're in a position like many of us are, alter a discourse that we probably don't participate in? How do you position yourself as an educator or a researcher to alter a culture that feels that evidence is based on the people that I talk to rather than the state of the world?
It's difficult. None of us alone can solve the problem. What we can do, though, is we have to kind of stark choices. Not the choice where you go out and solve global warming here, that it's false one. But you do have a choice. Am I going to play and be complicit with the skill and skill regime, the accountability regime, because that's where the grant money is, or that's going to get me a scalability? I mean, my argument, I mean, this is a choice people have to make. We've got to stand up and say, no, the Gates Foundation doesn't need to control schools through accountability, the Common Core standards that are then put, if they just become, again, another set of standards to teach to and for test takers to make. The people who really have the front line are teachers, because the teacher knows that the only really truly ethical thing is to educate. And the system is saying, I'm going to punish you if you educate. Right? It takes tremendous guts for that teacher to say, I'm going to educate until they throw me out of school. Right? Now, they may never throw you out, but my belief is that you educate and people will pass the stupid test. But if they don't, yeah, you will lose your job. But, you know, one of the things that has just seemed to me recently is how, again, the liberals are just as responsible as conservatives. This rhetoric that schools should be about jobs. Let's have accountability. What sorts of jobs does the college give rise to for kids? What did you get for your money to high school? In a developed country, 3/5 of the jobs are service work. The biggest employer in America is Walmart. Since 2008, we have vitiated unions and wages so that we have the most productive workers in the world with the lowest wages now that they've had in years. Most of them doing mindless service jobs and fired on the spot, and then it will help productivity of the stock price. So if the purpose of schooling is jobs, then it must be your role to produce workers for Walmart. See, but you don't want your kid going to Walmart, right? So the point is, we have to produce, school cannot be about jobs for a society where there are no good jobs. It has to be about having a life. Being able to contribute and be an agent, whether you're paid for it or not, being able to understand the structure of your society so you are not scammed and duped by people, and being able to stand up and tell the truth, for example, that it isn't teachers' unions that destroyed education. You know, it isn't people's willpower that makes that's not a popular thing to say now, but that's not, nobody became a teacher or a professor to be popular. There's way more. Nobody wants to date us, so we...
Well, so we've got a couple of questions from the audience about the relation between the 2003 book, which I think you all sort of part of our camp, and the most recent book, the education era. And are there some of the learning principles that you articulated in the first book that have either changed or transformed over time?
The thing is, the success of my book which is typical of many books, was timing, and over which I had no control. It came out before a rush of other books. It came out just as people wanted an academic to say games were good. And as a result, most people read the book to say games should go to school. The book does not say that. It says games have deep learning principles in them if they're good games, and the learning principles should go to school. With talk, with text, with games, with calculators, with tools. It was not saying games go to school. It's not a word. But people wanted it to say that. So what it says, I still very much mean. What I didn't stress enough in the first book is any technology, games being one, internet, social media, none, any technology that can do that good, can do that bad. So social media can give rise to echo chambers in which people talk only to people like themselves. And actually we know when you're in an echo chamber talking to people who agree with you, you get stupider, because the only way to get distinction is to polarize the beliefs further and further. So the new book is essentially about the fact is that, people have said, well, the reason humans are stupid is because our minds evolved on the, savannah as hunter-gatherers, and we're living this complex thing. We just don't have the mind to do it. And I don't think that's true. I think that humans evolved, but I argue that we evolved to be what I call plug-and-play devices. Our head was not meant to be alone. It's meant to plug into other stuff. And the key thing first plugged into in evolutionary history is language. Right? Language was a tool to allow people to organize themselves into groups to accomplish stuff. Right? We plugged in the most powerful technology we've ever had, all of it. And the trouble is, we're not plugged, we're now become trusting individual intelligence, like the school of one, the experts, when in fact we are stupid alone, but smart if we are networked in the right way. So the book is saying we are meant to be collectively intelligent, and there are conditions under which collective intelligence flourishes. A game like Folded is one of them, Galaxy Zoo, good gaming affinity spaces. Now, a collective, just to give one example, collective intelligence, that is where you network with other people and tools. So a perfect example of collective intelligence would be a hunting party in World of Warcraft, especially if they've got a damage meter and mods that are facilitating that everybody's doing their job. Collective intelligence requires you to honor diversity. It is about saying, none of us know everything. You might know one and only one thing. That might be the crucial piece of information I know. So by definition, an echo chamber or a network, a social network that has not leveraged difference, is not collective intelligence. So I'm saying that we should move from the game stuff to an idea of the big G games, that is games like affinity spaces, social things, and then say, how can this whole network of stuff be made collectively intelligent? How can I get smarter with other people rather than stupider? Now, we do know how to make a collectively unintelligent group. It's called a committee. We don't know well how to make a collectively intelligent group, although we have some very good beginning examples, right? And gaming is a place where you can see examples.
So one of the ways that society over time, we've talked about this in the past, has created sort of aggregators of intelligence through institutions.
Yes.
And institutions take it on the chin. They don't really,
They don't thoroughly take it on the chin, but what's happened is institutions, every technology is a cutting-edge sort, right? There's good and bad. We humans don't produce perfect stuff. When we try to produce utopias, we always blow it, right? Conservative utopias. But see, institutions were a solution to a major problem, that is how to engage in collective work, right? And they were the only solution. Their downside is to achieve efficiency, they do what I call they throw infrastructure. That is, they did stuff that was effective and good, and they froze it as a ritual, took it for granted, and often we keep doing it when it's no good. Like the QWERTY keyboard, right? It was functional because you can jam keys. Now you don't need it at all, but we keep it as frozen. But there wasn't really any other solutions. Today there is another solution. We can organize people bottom up and top down together through collective media and social media, through passion. And therefore we have a new question. We want to ask, where should institutions be the effective way? And where should self-organizing groups be the effective way? And when can institutions sponsor self-organizing groups? For example, why can't a school, a college, sponsor a self-organizing group to study the Italian Renaissance and be an affinity space and mod simulations of it and do that? See, so we have new questions. And one of those is, if we can't unfreeze some of the worst stuff, by the way, universities are among the places with the worst inertia in the world. If we can't begin to unfreeze some of their frozen structures, then they have real competition with these other places. So I'm not anti-institutional, but I'm anti this idea that the world is the way it was before, that we only have this one solution to joint problems when we now have a multiple variety of solutions. And I'm not sure all schools should be heavy top-down organizations. You know, affinity spaces, like designing good sounds, create tremendous amount of products by the millions, much of it at very high standards, lots of learning, mentoring, modeling, and they're not sponsored by institutions for that.
So many of us work for institutions. Are we sort of, like, in your view, should our role be to engage in transgressive play? Or should we challenge those institutions to revitalize them?
Well, I think if you work at a college, like you and I do, well, colleges are right on the verge of being the most moribund institutions we have, because what they did, as an example of, I think, marvelous stupidity, is they sponsored their enemy. See, they all want to make money through ego. really like just record your lectures into a talking head thing to make it e-learning. See, think about that. We already have the University of Phoenix. They have 400,000 students. If all you're going to do is enable e-learning, one organization or two are going to do it. Right? You're just going to put yourself out of business. And the reason we're doing it is our consumers no longer like our product. We've done the product now, we have great inflation. Nobody really wants an education anymore, they just want a job in finance. So our institution is broken massively. Now, if you're at the end of your life like me, you can still just stay there and reap the rewards, right? If you're a beginning professor, you got to say, wow, I got to get here. How long is this broken institution going to last long enough to keep me around? But only 30% of faculty are in the tenure track or tenure. Right? Most of our faculty associates teaching 5 courses more exploited than some employees in service jobs, right? If you're young, you got to say, wow, there's a time where maybe I had to take a risk here. Because the risk that's going to really cost you is riding a wave that's about to crash into the ground. So I don't know. If I was a young professor now, I would take some risks because I think the institution just simply can't sustain itself. See, it's not that Harvard's not going to go away, right? Harvard's the waterboard of students. They still fill it. They're selling status, right? They don't sell education, they sell status. See, what we're on waterboard of students. They can't. They won't pay us for waterboard. So we have to actually give them something. So if all we've got to offer is the same e-learning the University of Phoenix does, we're going to go broke. That seems to be obvious. Now, place like UW is in the middle. You can waterboard for a little while longer, but not much. Hey, look at the moment, this movement, or Moses, whatever they are. I mean, who wanted a class with 50,000 people in it? All of the rich people, I want my kids to go to Claremont, so he's in a small class. They got in the movement with 50,000 people on the internet, and then receives the body, and this is the future of education. I know you're going to do one, but that's all right. I just recorded stuff for it.
Position feels nice.
Right. Well, baby boomers hypocrites, I always say.
So what about the K-12? You talked a little bit about
so the K-12 world is, I say facetiously sometimes, in New York, you got this obsession with STEM, that if every kid learns algebra, somehow we're going to beat the Chinese. Right? But what a kid in New York really thinks is he doesn't know how to put a snorkel on, because he's going to be underwater. When you're taking charge of children who have a complete future, I would say, of my own, if I had a small child at home, and I changed fields because they determined out something new, I would say, look, what I want for that child is the capacity for that child to protect himself in the face of massive change. Change, which we know will be very cruel to the board, right? One of the predictions you should get is these changes will be felt more by the poor than the rich. They'll be felt by the rich. The suffering not the equal. But living in a complex world full of scams, casino capitalism, lies to make profit while we degrade the environment, I want my kid to be resilient, smart, adaptable, ethical, and able to protect himself and other people. And I want my teacher to give that to the kid. And I'm sure that is the education teachers want to give the kids. I can tell you that passing a McGraw-Hill test or a high-stakes content test on social studies is not going to equip you for Armageddon. So but see, for teachers, it's a moral choice. This is a child. You're giving them skills. For example, the skill to be able to put up a challenge, to persist past failure, to delay gratification, to be able to stress multiple solutions and innovation, those are skills that will let that child survive. The ability to pass a paper and pencil test because some idiot senator thought it was justice is not a skill that's going to help you. But if we can't do better, let's at least give out some more.
So when you think about, when we were talking, you were thinking about the participatory democracy, where you got to get in the world and see the problems, feel the problems, and get that sense of urgency. And a lot of folks here and elsewhere talk about the role that games can play in that. sort of like energizing people to get more involved in the world. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the ideas that you've seen recently that are promising, or some of the obstacles that you see for that sort of?
I think it's the same thing. I've also recently that the issue, the issue about literacy, old literacy, traditional books, remember those things, even when they were physical. The issue about when literacy was good for you and bad for you are exactly the same things, right? Now, we say reading any book is good. That was never true. If you were reading like a writer, asking how is this book designed, how can I leverage it for my purposes, and pushing yourself to read harder and harder stuff is good for you. So the same thing with games. If you're playing that game that's designed, how is it designed, how can I leverage that, how can I think strategically, how can I connect that to other technologies and to the world. I think producing gamers who are model-based users as they play, who understand the notion of evidence and strategy and modding, those are true 21st century educationists. But just the idea that you hand people literacy and they get smart is not true. In fact, the more educated people are, the more they believe in what the government tells them, right? Because they've got a stake in the status quo, they don't want to question. As Chomsky pointed out, the first people to turn against the Vietnam War was the working class, not the middle class, not the educated people, right? So literacy does not make you smart unless it makes you critical. And the same thing is true of gaming. What I love about gaming is the ability to get commodity attitude that I want to see what the worlds are like. I want to see what it can be related to. I want to see how it can be transformed. I don't think games have to save the world. I'm totally impressed by the way we are expanding with the downloadable games into whole new areas of art. If you haven't played Thomas's The Bomb, it's a fabulous game. There's many downloadable games. We're just now beginning to explore the many possibilities of games that go beyond, that are entertainment games, but that still go beyond our idea of what a game is. But remember, I don't want to say everything games. I do think we should continue to really push the boundary. I don't know why we can make Assassin's Creed with such a complete, beautiful recreation of many of the Renaissance and not have people able to walk into the Renaissance in college. I don't know why we can't take something like that and have people solving problems in the Renaissance, studying it, living it, doing it, maybe teaching each other. I don't know why the game company has the resource, but the educators don't have that resource. The tools are not there. I think that this, we literacy people know that the history of literacy, writing has never been universal. Lots of countries made reading universal, but not writing. And writing is where it's produced, right? And the reason is writing is far more dangerous to society than reading. And yet now we have a society in which people can make, anybody who wants to can design their own stuff. And you don't need a credential, you don't need to be an expert. You can find a community of people in affinity space that will mentor you. You have to put in the time, you have to do the learning curve, you can become a maker. So we have the capacity for the first time in history to really stress that people who are makers have power that consumers alone don't have. There's going to be questions, who gets to be the maker? Are we going to let poor kids be makers? The fab stuff, if you haven't read Neil Gershenfeld's book from MIT on Fab Labs, he's Cal Gershenfeld's brother. He is the smart Gershenfeld. And he, they're both very smart. Is Cal here? He's my sock is here? Well, he's my version. The thing about the fab stuff, which is not, by the way, 3D printers printing plastic junk, it's extractors and printers which are really going to transform manufacturing. Because you can print skin now. You can print little kidneys, not big ones, you have little kidneys. And there's 3 ways to print houses. Okay? And the houses you print, the only cheaper thing would be to get somebody to tin, right? But what the fab movement is going to do, the real fab, that is where you're digitizing production at the hands of anybody to do it, is it will remove the low-cost advantage of manufacturing in countries like China and Thailand. So the whole issue of outsourcing that we've gone through, that we thought, is an internal change, will within the next few years be growing more and more because people will be able to, for example, you just send in a blueprint which you want made to some little shop which will make it. Right? Manufacturing will be dispersed, it will be crafty, and will not be, it will ruin the labor advantage of those countries. it will return to the United States, but not with jobs, right? Or with fewer jobs. So see, that's going to be transformational in the world. Think about it. What's going to happen when the world's fastest growing economy, based on surplus labor, isn't needed anymore, and we get manufacturing back with no more jobs than at Walmart, see? On the other hand, it sure says the kid who wants to partake in the 21st century better know how to be in the neighborhood, better know what that is. Right? This is going to be a form of power. Not just power, by the way, to make money. It's a way to get off the grid as well, and the political.
So give us three games and give us a little playthrough, a little story of why you're there and what you find interesting about them. A couple of highlights from your research.
Well, so I mentioned Thomas was alone. It's almost as minimal as a game can be, and yet it's incredibly powerful. So you kind of learn what are just the basics of making a great game, because this is stripped to its basics, and yet it's a very good story. The guy who does the narration is in a British, but nobody can narrate like a British person. and it's a very emotionally moving story. All we're moving around is squares and stuff. It's an example of a movement, certainly Gray and Limbo, and those are all just amazingly new takes. The other thing that has interested me, one thing when you play as many games as me, you realize, wow, I played this 5 times already. This is the 5th sequel. It's like the last Assassin's Creed, Boston. Boston's great, but I've played this 18 times. It's just like the other games. Furthermore, these buildings are not really big enough to climb. Right? It's not like a cathedral. So, there is this danger of sequelitis, right, that you want to look at. I've become intrigued by a movement that could be good or bad. So with The Walking Dead serial, it's really a wonderful take on a digital movie, right? Participated, if you go at it, this is a great game. No, this isn't what it is. It's an interactive digital medium with really compelling. And I thought, well, that's that. I think that a lot of games are becoming movies, and they lower the difficulty level to the fact you can't even tell if you're playing when it's playing. That's good. I think that's going to happen. I think that loses some of what's good about a game, although it makes what's good about a movie maybe. But see, I think The Walking Dead didn't try that. The Walking Dead set out to be a game-like interactive piece of media that really made you think about choices you made. I'm playing one now. It isn't a particularly good-looking game. The director's cut of Predator. That also one of the strangest games ever made, but it made you think, as did Heavy Rain and games like that. So I think that's another genre. A good example, it's a great game, but the last BioShock, which I thought was very interesting, mainly interesting for the world it created, did raise the problem, though, that the other BioShocks were deeply strategic games, right? You could not get out of that game unless you set up a battle, really fought these guys. And so, it was deeply strategic to be deeply enjoyable as problem solving. This one, in order to give you this wonderful cinematic experience, just became a traditional shooter and not very difficult. And so even though the game is very good, you're saying, wow, but what really made me feel good as a gamer was, when the strategy worked. So I think there's a lot going on with games now, and we finally have broken the surface to get into truly novel games. And I think that's where people like Tracy Bullitt are hugely responsible for that, and others did.
So, I know that you blog a lot.
Well, I blog incrementally.
Are you still doing poetry?
I do poetry. I haven't done it for a while. I only do it when I'm suicidal. Maybe anybody who doesn't feel suicidal sometimes is not thinking.
So I have two questions to wrap this up. So the first question is really what's the next idea that you're pursuing, that you're trying to think through? You did the anti-education book. Now what's the big idea?
I never, by the way, every book I've read has been an accident. Yeah, it's been somebody has shown me something or done something that made me want to write that book. And this is just me. I think it's probably true of some of you, but not all of you. I can only write about what I don't know about. Once you know a lot about it, it's just dead. Right? Everything is qualified. It's gray. So my books are good when I'm stupid, and they're bad when I'm smart. And they have to move on to something else. Why? Because a book where you at least believe in what you're saying enthusiastically entices somebody to think about it, right? A book that says, well, it's all gray and everybody said it before. But, so I never know where they're going to go. The anti-education book was just written. I wanted to call it, Orwell's problem on human stupidity, but the publisher wouldn't let me do that. Chomsky said kind of famously once, there's two big classes of problems that humans face. One class he called Plato's problems. That is, people seem to be smarter than they should be. So kids learning language look really smart compared to what evidence they've got. But then Orwell's problem is there's many cases where people have plenty of evidence that are stupid, right? So there's cases where humans are smart, and even when they don't have evidence, and there's cases where they have ample evidence and they're stupid. That Orwell's problem is the problem of society, right? How do we get smart? It is about ignoring evidence. So I'm intrigued by the fact that human stupidity is killing us. But I've gotten interested in, I want to learn to grow food because I've gotten very interested in the body of literature on processed food and on microorganisms. They're radically rediscovered. First of all, it turns out only 1 out of 10 of our cells is us. The other 9 are microorganisms that are actually evolving faster than us to protect us. And with processed food, we kill most of them, including rendering some extinct. Right, and as people now think that a lot of the diseases that we get, intestinal and other diseases, including obesity, are due to the fact that we have wiped out most of our ecology. Right, and we're not individuals, even when we're not, we're not like you need these organisms. So that intrigues me as an example. If you look at the literature on processed food, one of the things that they thought, which is a really fundamental assumption, is that a chemical is a chemical. Right, so if chemical X makes food nutritious, I can just produce it out of rubber tires and put it in food and it'll work. And it turns out it never does because chemical X doesn't do anything. It only does it in partner with the other 300 chemicals that were in the apple or blueberry. Right, it's a complex system. And I think this is what we're learning across the board. A complex system is a system that is sensitive to initial conditions. Right, that multiple variables, even a small change, could have made a big change later. Would you count a classroom as a complex system? Okay, well, the one thing about we know about complex systems is that only the one type of research that cannot be applied to a complex system is controlled studies, right? Because you can't control everything. So if the classroom is a complex system, I think you'd have to be more one to think it wasn't. Then we have a government that says the gold standard for evidence is the only type of research that could not possibly be done on it.
We need some applause.
Try something new, but I do this work in discourse analysis, and it's really intriguing me. Well, discourse analysis and analyzing language as a linguist, but a lot of our discourse today is multimedia, multimodal, right? It's got images and games, for example. So I'm really exploring whether there could be a discourse analysis of games, and I'm using as my example to try to make it work out a game like Thomas's Alone because it is so minimal that it goes right to what are the elements of communication in a game. And then you can build out to better games. I mean, not to better games, but to more elaborate.
So we've covered a lot of topics this afternoon from despair.
Yeah, I feel a poem coming out.
So let's. Give us a nice word to land on. What should we be hopeful for in our work as educators and researchers?
I think the thing that especially people who are younger should be hopeful is, if there was ever a time where finally designers and academics and teachers could have a major impact on the world as now. If there was ever a time that risk-taking is worth doing, and risk-taking is fun if you have to. If you're going to lose, but you're going to lose anyway, take your risk. And so I think that this is a golden opportunity to finally change business as usual. We academics have had next to no impact on the world. Teachers have not got a voice in the national conversation. Designers have restricted their skills to a very small subset of what they can do. And if we see ourselves all simultaneously as designers, designing new futures in a highly risky situation, but without deference to the old authorities, then this can be fun on the way on again.
Well said, Dr. G.